Hello, my name is Darlene Sorrell. I serve as the Parish Nurse for Hales Corner Lutheran Church. Today I'd like to speak with you about the Parish Nurse's role in caring for your parishioner that may have compulsive hoarding or hoarding disorder. A few years ago, I received my first referral from the Public Health Department for a hoarding parishioner. I knew very little about hoarding at that at that time. I had heard stories about the Collier brothers from Manhattan, or saw the movie Grey Gardens to hear about the eccentric family member of Jackie Kennedy who lived in squalor. So I would like to share with you some information to care for, that I've learned over the years of caring for 5 clients. We'll start with a definition from the DSM-5, which characterizes hoarding disorder as a persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions, regardless of their actual value, because of a perceived need to save them. The result is an accumulation of possessions that congest and clutter areas that are active living areas, and they compromise their intended use. The exact cause of hoarding is not known, although there are strong links to many mental health issues, such as OCD, ADHD, psychosis, depression, and dementia. Compulsive hoarding affects approximately 700,000 to 1,004,000 people in the United States, which is about a 2 to 6% of the population. Hoarding usually starts in adolescence, between the ages of 13 or 14, and it tends to grow worse as the person ages. Cases as young as 8 years old, however, have been found and documented. There's a strong connection between having a family member who is a hoarder and you becoming a hoarder yourself. Hoarding can start after a person has experienced an extreme and devastating life event, such as the death of a loved one, divorce, or even eviction. Hoarding can be more than the fear of throwing things away. It's hard for them to actually make that decision to throw something away. Just thinking about discarding an item can trigger extreme anxiety. Compulsive hoarders really rarely see that they have a problem, and it is generally when a family member objects to their living style or an event happens where EMS may be called, falls, fires, and such. The Milwaukee Task Forcing on Hoarding identifies 2 roles when caring for people with hoarding disorder. The 2 main roles are that of enforcing and supporting. When risk to the person or the public are evident, the enforcer will have to clarify the conditions and what needs to be done, and those things that need to be done to avoid receiving penalties from government agencies. The role of the supporter is to provide the assistance to meet these goals and to avoid negative consequences. Frequently, a parish nurse can be seen as someone who is in the supporter role. Here are a few of the guidelines suggested by the Milwaukee Task Force on Hoarding when becoming involved as a supporter or an enforcer in the hoarding situation. It's always important to build trust. Make realistic time. Include the person in and ask permission to touch their items or move about in their home. Seek an understanding from the hoarding person's perspective. They feel shame, frustration, anxiety, or isolation in their situation. Always use respectful language, verbal and body, that is. Match their terms, such as they have a collection or their things. Avoid derogatory terms such as junk, trash, or the actual term hoarding. Remember, body language and facial expressions speak volumes, which is oftentimes difficult when entering a home that is much more than you could ever expect. And so be patient with that person. Express concerns rather than telling the person what to do. Always encourage the person when they are making progress and don't look back. Even if it's only a little bit of progress, one should be praised for that. Encourage them to include support from community resources, social workers, therapists, home assistants, and professional agencies who have organizers. Catholic Charities in the Milwaukee Archdiocese actually has in-home support specialists who work specifically with hoarders. Seek out a hoarding task force in your community. Internet, I found most communities or counties have some form of a hoarding task force to help you. Collaborate with agencies. Become involved with those agencies and seek permission from the hoarder to obtain a collaborative practice with those clients. I am currently working with 4 hoarding families, and the following is a small example of the activities that I had with the family during this time. How was this hoarding discovered? The daughter had visited from out of town. She came at Christmas, and she had purchased some new furniture for her parents. She attempted to help out by cleaning things out of the home, by trying to throw away many of those items that she felt were unimportant. The mother became extremely agitated and anxious, and even went as far as to call the police department on her daughter because she was so upset with her. The daughter had not allowed her to have input into the removing of some of the items. This led to a chain of events, and the hoarding was discovered. The police department notified the public health department, and while the public health department was doing their assessment, they asked questions about the family's spirituality. Did they attend church? I have a close relationship. Members are a part of, and therefore they called the church and notified me of the issues, asked me if I would consider going over to the home to see what we could do to help this family. I had interactions with the husband on the phone, and he had actually notified one of the pastors that this incident had happened. And so when I spoke with him, he allowed me to have contact with the wife And then after that contact, she had given me permission to come to the house to do an assessment to see what we could do to help. Whenever possible, I make my visits to the hoarders' homes my last visits of the day. You never really know what you may encounter in these homes, and you don't want to track anything into other homes that you might be visiting. Only take items into the home that are essential for your visit. Leave coats, sweaters, purses, bags, any equipment that really isn't necessary for the visit in your car. I usually don't take anything in the house with me on my very first visit, except a consent form for a collaboration of care and privacy information. I was given the opportunity to do a visual assessment of the home. Initially, we met in the family room. The family discussed some things with me, the incident that happened, and then they asked me if I would like to see the rest of the home. Spiritual assessments, I suggest that you might want to use a HOMES, HOMES, multidisciplinary hoarding risk assessment. This assessment looks at the health, obstacles, mental health, endangerment, and structure of the people and the home. Also, the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, the ICD, level of clutter hoarding scale is another tool that you can use. These are just two of the many, many hoarding scales and assessments that you can find on the internet. And what you have to do is find the ones that work the best for you. In this case, the ICD also focused on safety issues such as fires, fall hazards, and avalanche conditions. Hazard reduction, whether it is a much slower process, promotes safety, allows relationship building, but progress needs to be continued to be made, even though you are going at a slower pace. So I will now discuss my assessment. The assessment of the overall health of the client found underlying health issues. The client has a history of hypertension. She stopped taking her medicines because she didn't think she needed them anymore. Oftentimes, hoarders cannot find their medications, and therefore they are non-compliant. Things are lost in the clutter. Part of every visit that I made to the home. The only way to enter the house was through the garage. The front door had so much clutter behind it and in the hallway that it was impassable. The only way to enter the house, as I said, was through the garage door. When I was given a tour of the house, the family room was cluttered free. The family room is the main room for all family activities, from eating to sleeping and socializing. The first floor bathroom was non-functioning, and that's an important assessment. Only one acceptable clear egress route was available. In the kitchen, the stove and stovetop do not work. And it was cluttered with papers and canned goods and that sort of thing. There was a large clothing rack in the kitchen. It was packed with clothing and an immovable shelf, metal shelf, that was also loaded with many different items. They do, however, have a working microwave and refrigerator. The living room had 8 clothing racks that were packed with clothing that had most of their receipts still on them. Most of their price tags still on them. Other clutter was about 3 feet deep. The dining room table was mounted with a combination of clothing and paperwork, and first floor bedrooms were unusable. The beds were mounted high with clothing and other clutter. The closets were packed tight with clothing. Unfortunately, the clothing was unreachable because of the clutter in front of the actual closets themselves. We proceeded to the upper level. The handrails to the second floor stairs were broken. The second floor bathroom does function. The second floor bedroom is hoarded, but there is an area on the bed where they can sleep. There is also a small lounge area on the second floor, and that was completely inaccessible because of the hoard that was there. We then went down to the basement. There are no handrails down the basement steps, and the basement was in the process of a major repair work from damage from the cold winter on the blocks. So there was clutter everywhere. However, it seemed to be a much more organized clutter. Areas and pathways were cleaned out so people could walk back and forth. You could get to the washer and dryer, any of the electrical boxes, or the furnace. There was no clutter around the furnace, which is very important for the fire safety. After the tour, we discussed the assessment of the living areas. I received written permission from them to get other agencies to help us with the cleanup that was going to be needed. We discussed an assessment we were going to need to do to start a plan of action. I proceeded to do blood pressure screenings, which I really didn't take to heart those initial blood pressure readings because of the fact that this is such a highly stressful time as I'm in their house. So we ended that meeting with a prayer and encouragement. The nursing diagnoses that are available for hoarding are almost endless. So I won't review those with you right now. My concerns were the major issues that needed to be addressed. We needed to look at making this a safe environment for the family who was not going to move out of the home. They needed a lot of work and a lot of help. So I enlisted the help of the fire marshal from this particular city. In speaking with him and giving him the assessment that I had of the home, we talked together, and it was noted that you have to have 2 egress routes in every home. The patio door, however, cannot be considered one of the egress routes, and that means there has to be a 3-foot width for people to walk through a hallway to be able to get to the door, and that area has to be cleaned out as much as the width of the door so that doors can be opened or closed accordingly. So that was our number one concern. Then after that, we, the fire marshal, handrails according to code must be available on stairs going up to the second level or down to the basement. Those items needed to be fixed within about a month, and a contract was developed so that they would read the contract, see what needed to be done, and this would be our starting point, because all focus was on the family's safety. After that, I, at the same time, contacted the Catholic Charities group that is from the Milwaukee Archdiocese, and a social worker, therapist, and an in-home volunteer came and met with the people, met with the family to assess the hoarding and to assess the cleanup. In the meantime, I met with the family again and I presented them the contract and had them sign the contract. They understood the contract as far as getting the handrails and the egresses open for their safety. And it was decided that I would come back in 2 weeks and we would see how things had progressed. Catholic Charities and I have been working in a collaborative practice to help this family with its hoarding. We have meetings by the phone about every other month just to see how the progress is being made. Initially, the family had some financial issues with being able to pay for all the assistance that they were given. Catholic Charities has ability to pay with them. Also, as the parish nurse, I have a fund for financial assistance for members of the congregation and community members. And we agreed to pay half of the fees that they were going to be charged for the first 3 months. After that, they were expected to take over the entire cost of the cleanup. Now, my role included their spiritual care. We did a lot of praying together. We have a counselor at the church who was able to meet with the husband and wife together to help support them as far as their marriage is. We also had Catholic Charities come in twice a month, and the therapist worked with the wife, who is the main hoarder. She has obsessive compulsive buying, and she also has completely lost her identity. They have a child that has some disabilities and requires her care, and it's quite involved, and so she is very, very busy with that. Well, the family was doing fairly well. We instituted the 3-pile system where you have a pile for things that you would like to donate, things that you would like thrown away, or things that you would like to keep. That worked fairly well. Initially, they were taking several loads of trash to the dump. Also, in some of the readings that I've done, it seems like there is such a value to these objects. As I said, there were 8 racks of clothing with tags still on them. So the wife really wanted those to be put to good use, which we did. We have a soup kitchen and a food pantry and a clothing. Um, excuse me. And we have a clothing giveaway. And so she was really happy that those things were being put to good use. I would see her every 2 weeks initially, and then monthly, taking her blood pressure every time, asking her about medications, physician appointments. The husband became instrumental in helping to get her to the doctor. She did receive medication, but didn't take it. I did a lot of education with her as far as her self-care. Even though she is taking care of her child, she really needs self-care to be able to continue to care for him. We found a respite program for the child, and that gave her a day that was free. It was just her day. And what she has chosen to do with that free day is to start cleaning out and decluttering. Unfortunately, she has some of the behaviors which are known as churning, and that is when a hoarder will clean an area. You have the perception, excuse me, that the hoarder has cleaned the area, when in reality, they just moved that hoard to another area. This happened to her with one of her bedrooms. Catholic Charities had worked, and she proceeded to start working in the living room, and unfortunately, some of those items made their way back into the bedroom, and the bed was unable to be used again. Don't be discouraged when you're working with hoarders. It is a very, very long process. Sometimes all we can do is hope for hazard reduction. This means piles cannot be higher than 3 feet. Those are avalanche dangers. Fire department will report them for hoarding if they go in and do an EMS call or a fire call, and they are afraid of being a victim of an avalanche because of papers. One of my other hoarders was someone that really had avalanche dangers in their home. This particular home did not have any active infestation. I have not seen any bugs or any mice droppings while I've been there. The hardest part is when I tell you that this has been going on for 2.5 years. So I know there's a lot of you thinking, wow, they really haven't made any progress. But I can tell you that the wife is a different person. She is less anxious, less anxiety. Her living room now has only 3 racks of clothing in it. The handrails and the egress paths are clean and clear. They have remodeled and now have a door. They have cleaned up the clothing rack and the metal shelf that was movable from the kitchen. Whenever I go, I praise her for anything that she has accomplished. She really needs to be feeling good about herself, and that is just so important. Unfortunately, she has not been following up with the therapist. She told me that she felt that there were other depressed people out there that could probably use her. So I've been working to encourage her to continue to work with the therapist. And one of the harder subjects that we've had to talk about is what to do with the son long term as far as how he will be cared for. They are in their 60s, and I'm just trying to help them ease into planning for his care after they are unable to care for him. So this is a really multifaceted case, and they are dear people. They attend church every every Sunday, and they do socialize. The outside of their house, as with many of my hoarders, is in perfect condition. Beautiful flower gardens, trees, plants. It's really interesting to me how they can take that time. It's like a release for her, especially for her, to work out in her garden. Um, so my advice to you is don't be discouraged. It's a very long process, and sometimes the best that we can hope for is that hazard reduction. Like I said, I've been working with them for 2.5 years, and there have been positive things that have come out of it. I just want to conclude by saying that there's no quick fix to hoarding, whether it is hoarding disorder or compulsive hoarding. As a parish nurse, we are a part of a collaborative practice and effort to assist our clients to a healthier living and to enhance their spiritual well-being. Please feel free to give me a call or email me if you have any other questions about this program. May God bless you and your practices. Thank you very much.